Hello Tribune viewers, welcome to this special broadcast. I'm joined by Mr. Sandeep Dikshit, our Deputy Editor in the New Delhi Bureau. Today we are here to discuss the extremely sensational remarks made by ex-Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. In an interview to a YouTube news show yesterday, Breaking Points, he has said that the Indian government, at the height of the farmers' agitation, threatened the Twitter with shutdowns and raids across its employees in lieu of certain tweets that were objectionable and critical of the government. So these comments have been viewed across the political spectrum with a great amount of interest both in the Congress and the BJP, and these come right on the eve of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit to the US on June 22. So Sandeep, how do you look at this particular timing of Jack Dorsey's comments?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when we look at these people who have interviewed Jack Dorsey, we will find where they're coming from. They're not even pro-Biden. They're not naturally pro-PM Modi. So this is a kind of a woke generation, which has a different perception of the world as such. And why now? That is the main question, because all these issues had been laundered earlier and we had already discussed these issues earlier. We had a pretty healthy democracy in that respect, and there were columns and columns on that. So naturally, if you look closely at that, three countries were targeted: India, Nigeria and Turkey. All the three countries are trying to chart out a foreign policy that is independent, that is free from Western interests, that subscribes to multipolarity. So there is an attempt to really strike them down and to show that they are not really what they would like to be. So yes, there is a concerted attempt at that point to bring down three large developing countries which are in the forefront of multipolarity, which are contributing to multipolarity. And this really reeks of something, especially as you pointed out, that PM Modi is scheduled to visit the US in a week's time. And as you know, there are a lot of organizations there, and a lot that are inimical to India, they are inimical to PM Modi. Some may be inimical to PM Modi, but a lot of them are both. And some of them are also going to stage the infamous BBC documentary when he arrives there. So there are absolutely a lot of attempts at provocation, and perhaps this is also one of them.
Very interesting insight, Sandeep. What I would also like to know from you is, the BJP today held a press conference and said that the timing of Jack Dorsey's comments coincides with Rahul Gandhi's US visit. Now, Rahul Gandhi has been in the US. We know he's made certain remarks that have created a sort of political storm domestically. That has been the case always. But do you see any kind of, coincidence with respect to Rahul being there and Dorsey making this comment yesterday in respect of an agitation that actually, as you said, ended in 2020-21?
And we discussed all of that. We discussed all those takedown requests earlier, if you remember. You've written about it, I have written about it. So then to dredge it out again, and especially as you very perceptively pointed out, it's at the end after Mr. Rahul Gandhi's visit to the US. So there is something in the air, and this is a very typical ploy by the US State Department, essentially to put countries under pressure through charges of human rights violations. And this is also part of that same playbook where they usually put countries under pressure on this account to ensure that they get leverage on other issues.
Sandeep, just a quick interruption, because you made a very significant point. You said that the US State Department's playbook.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is, for the interest of viewers, John Kirby just now, I think on June 6th, gave a kind of certificate to the health of Indian democracy. And when he was asked, what do you have to say on the health of Indian democracy, considering certain world indices have put us in a bad spot regarding the democratic issue, he actually said, go to New Delhi and see for yourself. So how do the two things add up?
The public face is slightly different, and of course the State Department will put up a public face. But what we have noticed in the negotiations for GE jet engine technology, for instance, it has been the White House and the National Security Council under the White House which has been pushing for more higher technology trade with India. And it has been the State Department which has been putting spanners in this move. And they have been actually discouraging this and trying to tie up India to human rights, tie up India to supporting US on Ukraine and all of that. So there is a definite dissonance in the US administration between the US State Department and the National Security Council, which is why Jake Sullivan has come today, and he will be meeting PM Modi and NSA Doval to wrap up the things in high-tech trade and etc., which should have been in normal circumstances the domain of the US State Department.
So you do see Jack Dorsey's comments as perhaps US State Department's ploy to maintain that very fine critical balance.
Oh, you got it. And
Okay.
this is a very familiar playbook. It's going on for decades and decades.
How do you think should India respond?
India will be responding in its own manner. India does not really give knee-jerk reactions as such. And they factor this in, that if this is the kind of stuff that is coming out from a very powerful arm of the US government, then naturally India will also try to balance it out by seeking friendships in other areas and not being too overly enthusiastic about going over to the US and signing on to everything that they want.
Right. So now coming to what the IT Minister of State Rajiv Chandrasekhar has rubbished Jack Dorsey's claims, and he has said that Twitter under Jack Dorsey was in continuous and repeated violation of the Indian law. So just to bring you back to that old the IT intermediary rules, very important rules were actually notified in February of 2021. These were called Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules of 2021. All social media giants were given time until May 26 to comply. I'm talking of 2021, when the Minister of IT today says Jack Dorsey and Twitter at that time were in violation of this particular law. So you remember, Sandeep, that Twitter was the last to comply.
They dragged their feet for 2 years, I think.
Yeah. So what had happened is, at the height of the farmers' agitation, there were some objectionable handles. Some even floated with hashtag genocide, which were obviously fake, and they were very inflammatory handles. And the government had requested Twitter at that time to pull down 257 URLs. And of course, Twitter had blocked handles and hashtags, several hashtags at that time, because the law enforcement had pointed out that these could lead to potential law and order issue. How do you see, these big tech giants repeatedly having run-ins with the Indian government, and how do you see this space panning out?
Well, the run-ins are a fact of life, in the sense that this is the first time two different value systems are colliding. But there is very little sympathy for the Indian stand, very little sympathy for the fact that India is facing problems of separatism. So as you mentioned, during the farmers' strike, there were some Twitter handles that were brought down. And as you very well know, that some of these Twitter handles had a dual agenda. They were also propagating very vociferously for separatism also. And that is where the genocide issue came up.
Yeah.
When we all know, as Indians living here, that there was no such genocide involved.
Correct. Sandeep, also, we cannot miss the larger picture here. Jack Dorsey's comments, and as you very insightfully put together the entire attempt of the US to kind of tone down countries that are charting their own independent foreign policy. Domestically also, viewers, it's a very critical time in Indian history. The BJP is running Prime Minister Modi is running for office again, and suppose he wins a third term, he becomes only the second Prime Minister after late Jawaharlal Nehru to repeat office while being in office thrice in a row.
That's true.
So there are attempts, on every front. Like the Congress has today said that Prime Minister should come clean on Dorsey's comments. How do you see the situation politically?
Yes, and add to it the concerted move to screen BBC documentaries in the US. And it has already been done in Australia, where the PM went recently, if you remember. So these are part of the same game plan, same playbook, let us say. And this is what is happening, and India is not a stranger to it, and PM Modi is not a stranger to it. So and they are going to show that they're taking it in their stride. But there will be some calculations going on when you see that it is the complete trust that India is seeking in the US is not really materializing with attempts by several quarters to try to pull down India on any loophole that they find, whether it's the human rights loophole or trade or arms purchases from Russia. So it's a concerted move to really straitjacket India into a particular way that they want India to behave.
So, as Sandeep points out, it's an extremely fascinating time in the country's history, and it's a very hotly contested electoral landscape, as we all know that we are headed into the 18th general election in 2024. The entire opposition space is active, and obviously Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as Sandeep says, is no stranger to criticism, and criticism is going to come. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.